So, we got some questions about grief. Can you tell us?
Okay, what is grief? When we try to define grief in psychological terms, we say grief is an emotional response to loss, right? Which is characterized by sadness, anger, and other difficult emotions that are hard to manage. And grief affects how we function. Grief affects how we relate to the world. Grief affects how we relate to ourselves as well. And then grief also affects our whole life experience. So most people attach the loss to a loss of a loved one through death, right? But there's a lot of losses that we go through in life. There's a loss of a job. It's a loss to some people. There's a loss of a spouse through divorce. There's a loss of when your car is stolen. So all these examples that I'm giving can trigger a grief response, because you have lost something that meant a lot to you. So it could be something or someone. To add on that, even pets, right? People losing pets, when you lose your dog, when you lose your cat, it can trigger a grief response to other people. So the loss is not only within the boundaries of the loss of a loved one through death. It's all those kind of multiple losses.
So are there any specific stages where one can go through grief?
Yes, a very interesting one. People go through stages of grief, and is anger, bargaining, denial, depression, and acceptance. But it is important to note that you don't go through these stages as in 1 to 5.
Okay.
You go back and forth.
Nice.
You can start anywhere as well. For example, let's say you've lost a loved one and you have to take care of the funeral arrangements. One is more likely to shift to maybe just a few hours in the denial phase, but because of the responsibility that is upon them when it comes to the preparations and everything else, then they quickly be like, okay, they're gone, let me give them the best burial that I can. So it may look like one has gone to the acceptance stage. I'm sure we've had experiences. People can talk of experiences where they've gone to give their condolences, and then the person that they're passing their condolences to is the one that is now encouraging others and giving others hope and sounding like that is the one now that is passing condolences to the others. But it is because of the responsibility that they have to deal with. Then later, when everything has settled, the person can then go back to the top stage, which is anger.
Okay.
You understand? And then progress as well. But that's how we go through the stages. So you don't move literally from 1 to 5. It can be 1, 5, 3, 2, 4. Today you find, and it also depends on where you are, because you can think you are at the acceptance stage, but come their birthday, the birthday of the deceased loved one, then you find yourself in the depressed state. Come the time when it's Mother's Day, and you're bargaining.
Yes.
It's Mother's Day. I don't have a mother.
Definitely.
Is it for real that my mother's gone? You know, you find yourself bargaining with what has happened. So we don't go through the stages straight like that. But yes, there are 5 stages of grief. However, there is also an interesting theory as well when it comes to explaining how people go through grief, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this is where people are moving between restoration and grief. At a certain time, you are at the restoration side. At a certain time, you are at the grief side. Also, it depends on circumstances as well. So there's those 2 theories that we use to explain the process of grief.
Okay, so what are the misconceptions that people have about grief?
That grief is a weakness. That's the first big one. Yeah, because we want to be strong, again. So the misconception is that you have to be strong, you have to have it together, you have to know what to do in this journey, you have to know what to expect. And that's not how grief is. And then also people think that there's a destination that you need to get to. As much as we say grieving is a process, this is a journey without a destination. This is a process without an end. There's not a day where you're gonna wake up and say, I'm done.
Actually, you are going to my question. We have a picture here that we want to show you. What do you think of this picture?
Yes, good. That picture talks to the misconception that we have about grief.
Okay.
Because the misconception we have is that the pain of grief needs to shrink. I mean, it's 5 years. I need to, the pain needs to be less. So when after 5 years, you experience a day where the emotions are just coming in like a flood, it's hard for people to understand. It's hard for people to actually put that together and reconcile that, because you look at the time frame, you look at how you are feeling, and it doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense. But the bottom jars of this picture are actually talking to the nature of grief as is. It is not the pain of grief that will get smaller, but we grow with that pain.
From the first jars to...
So the top jars, the perception is that the pain, remember the ball represents the pain. So the first jars are saying as time goes on, the ball will get smaller. The pain will get smaller. That is what the jars are saying. And it's frustrating to see that after so many years or after such a long time, there are moments where it feels like you just heard about the death yesterday. So the bottom jars are actually giving us a true reflection of grief. Even though the pain doesn't get smaller, we grow. We learn to live with it. We learn to accommodate the pain. We learn to embrace it. I normally say your pain of grief needs to be your friend, because it's not going anywhere. So as with a friend, today I'm talking, tomorrow you are talking. So let's give each other a chance. There will be days where you're going to wake up and your grief is louder.
Okay.
And when you've become comfortable with your grief, you are going to embrace your pain instead of judging yourself and wonder, why is it after 10 years I'm feeling this way? But you're going to embrace it. You'll know that, oh, my friend has visited, so I need to cater for my friend. So you are going to allow yourself to work through that pain without being conscious of the time, because you understand that that pain does not stop you from growing. That pain does not stop you from creating new memories, because the other difficult part, remember, grief is us learning to live without. our loved one. So you are going to learn to do things for yourself. When we talk about growth, let's take, for example, a family that has lost a father who was a giver, a father who was a provider, a father who was a protector, right? The mother is going to take up that role. The family as a whole, they are going to take up that role because they will learn to provide for themselves. That's the growth we're talking about. There are certain things that you are going to learn which you didn't know or you were not doing because you had your loved one taking care of these things. Maybe the father was responsible for taking the kids to school, driving them to school. As a mother, now that you're here, you are either going to learn to drive or you are going to get transport. That's growth because now you are trying to find ways of moving on past the grief. That's growth. The new ways that you are learning, the new traditions that you'll be forming. If the father was the one praying maybe at 12 o'clock when we celebrating the new year, somebody's going to take over that tradition. It's still going to, that's the growth. But it doesn't mean we've erased the memory of the father. It doesn't mean we've forgotten about him. We still miss our father. We still wish our father was here. As much as we have grown, we still wish if there was another way, he would still be the one doing those things. So we can still grow with our pain of grief. We don't have to measure our success or how we deal with our grief from how smaller the pain gets, but we need to measure it from how we learn to cope and grow without the presence of our loved one.
Yeah, so now let's talk about the task of grief.
Yeah, okay, the task of grief. Grief is there to serve a purpose. There's a reason why we grieve. There's a process that we need to go through, and grief take us through that process. So when we try to explain the purpose of grief, we use an acronym, TEAR, TEAR, which talks to the task of grief. So the T stands for we grieve because grief needs to allow us to accept the reality of the loss. You need to take your time, grieve, and accept the reality. When we talk about the reality of the loss, we're talking about the changes that comes with the loss.
Okay.
That is your reality. What am I talking about? Your identity, for example. You change. The reality is that you are moving from a child that had parents to a child that no longer has parents. That's your reality. The reality is that you are moving from being a mother or a father that had your partner to help you grow your kids together and parent your kids, but your reality is changing from that to that of a single parent. So you need to allow yourself to grieve so that you accept the reality of the loss. And there's also to experience the pain of the loss. There's really no need for people to be strong when you're grieving. Through loss comes pain. When we lose, there's pain that comes with it. There's sadness that comes with it. And it's through grief that you create a space, a safe space for yourself to be able to express those uncomfortable emotions and feelings of pain, anger, and sadness. And then we have this A that talks to adjust to the new environment without the lost person. Okay. Through grief, you also then allow yourself to process the changes and do the necessary adjustments.
Does it mean you forget about the person?
It doesn't mean you forget about the person. It means you now begin to learn to do life without them. If the person was your confidant, you begin to form other relationships with other people that you can trust so that you can confide in them. If the person was the provider, you need to learn to provide for yourself. because the provider is gone. So there's a change that comes with the loss and adjustment. Only grief allows us to adjust, because remember, grief takes you to yourself. It draws you towards yourself. It forces you to take time, sit down and reflect. Think of the changes, think of what this means to you, think of where to from here. That's the task of grief. That is where the adjustment parts come in. And the last alphabet is the R, which talks to reinvest in the new reality.
Wow.
There is always a new reality that comes after the loss. And it's important to reinvest in that. If you have lost your spouse, you need to reinvest in the new reality of showing up as the only parent that your kids have left. If you are a child, an adult child that has lost their parent, and your parent was your support as the grandparent to your kids, you need to reinvent the reality of showing up for your children without the support of your parent who was the grandparent. So this means this is where the move on part comes in. But I like to say, let's not talk about moving on, because moving on is like you putting something there and you move away from it. But we move with our grief. So it's like you have now created that safe space for yourself, or that safe container, or whatever that it is that you have created to carry your grief with you, with pride, with embracement, without feeling guilty. Believe you me, people do feel guilty for grieving, right? Because they think, I'm not doing it. I need to be strong for the kids. If the kids see me like this, what does it mean for them? So in that way, I shouldn't be grieving. But when you have reinvented the new reality that you are living in, you understand that this memory will live with you forever. And you carry it with pride. That is why after 20 years on their birthday, you will still remember them. One day you will shed tears. One day you'll remember them with laughter. That is why on your birthday, you will still remember the things that they used to do for you. And some days, on certain years, it will be with laughter. On certain years, it will be with an ocean of tears as well. And it's okay.
So on that particular one, what are the ways, what are the healthy ways to process grief?
Accept that you have lost, and there are emotions that are uncomfortable with the loss. Accept that it's okay to not be okay around that time. Accept that there's no need for you to be strong for anyone. You really need to allow yourself to respond to this situation in a human way, because grief is a natural response. We naturally respond when we are dealing with loss. And then notice how the grief has affected you, so that you are able to make the necessary adjustments for yourself. Get help if you have to, and also get help, we mean professional and from family and friends, things like that.
As a friend, a family member, sister, brother, what's the easiest way for me to support? Yeah,
it depends on the need. Let's not ask what can I do for you. Let's not ask what can I do for you, because they will always say nothing.
Okay.
I'm fine, ne? Mm-hmm. But let's offer those little things, like especially in the first 6 weeks of grief. They are very difficult. The person is not functioning well cognitively. The person is dealing with fatigue because they are not sleeping well.
Yes.
And they still have to run around do legal stuff and whatnot. As a friend, offer to go with them, offer to drive them, offer to be there and hold their hand. Where they are going for important things, be there just to help them listen, because they will hear things and still forget. Grief makes you forgetful. You will get into an office, they'll tell you, bring these documents. If there's no one to remind you or writing them down, you'll go home and then you will forget, what did they say I need to bring? If it's a friend with kids, offer to take care of the kids sometimes. Sometimes just go in, clean the house, because grief can make one feel tired. Remember, the energy is drained. You're not eating well, you're not sleeping well. So tasks such as taking care of the house, doing the dishes, taking care of the kids can feel like a lot. So do those little things. So look at how best you can assist. Don't wait for the what can I do for you, or call when you need help. They're not going to call.
From a professional lens, how do you as a social worker deal with a grieving person?
You don't have to deal with them. You just need to create a safe space for them to work through their emotions, right?
Oh.
That's the first thing.
Some challenges. My question is supposed to be, do you face some challenges while dealing with a grieving person?
Yes, there could be. Challenges? The first one is that one that people feel guilty for grieving. That is the first challenge. You are more. Sometimes you do get a person that is grieving, but they are judging themselves. They feel like they shouldn't be. As I was making an example, if it's a parent, I need to be strong for my kids. If it's a daughter and then they've lost a father, I need to be strong for my mother. So people having that perception that they need to be strong. The other challenge that you'd get is people questioning their religion. Mm-hmm. I've had people asking questions like, where was God? I honestly wouldn't have an answer to say, where was God? You'd have someone saying, my partner was sick, we prayed, we did everything, but this still happened, and they would want to know, where was God? They would ask you literally, where was God? What do you think? They would want your opinion on where was God? Why did God allow this to happen? I wouldn't know. And this is where you need to be honest as well and let the person know that it's okay to have some questions that we will not be able to answer, right? And then the other challenge that would have is grief that is contaminated with guilt. Okay. Yeah, this is where a person is grieving, but there's guilt as well. I'll make an example. Your father abused you, or your husband was abusive towards you, and then they've passed on. There's pain, but there's relief. Or there's pain, but there's also anger. You are angry at this person for what they put you through, but you find yourself also hating that they are gone. That dealing with that kind of grief is a problem. Sometimes is the guilt like you were told that your mother is sick for some time, or your sister is sick for some time, and you kept on postponing, I'll come, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then they pass on. You live with that guilt. It can be challenging to deal with a grief that is contaminated with guilt.
In closing, can someone truly move on
from grief? We don't move on. We move with. Because the moving on part.
That's what you explained.
Yes. Yeah. Because the moving on part can be hurting. And to some people, the moving on part can be understood as, I need to forget about you and move on. And how do I do that? So the best way is to let the person understand that you can move with your grief. You can still grow with your grief. There's no need for you to leave your grief behind. But we need to go through a process where we create that healthy relationship with our grief, so we move on with it, not move away from it.
If there is a one short message that you want to leave to the listener right now, someone that is watching this video and is grieving, what would be the message?
It's okay. Allow yourself to grieve. Give yourself permission to grieve. I use the word permission intentionally because people would resort to denying themselves the opportunity to grieve and have reasons why they believe they cannot allow themselves to grieve. Give yourself that permission to grieve. Create a safe space for you to grieve. Create a supportive structure that is positive, that will feed positively into you. And it's not always going to be like that. When you allow yourself to grieve, it gets better with time, because the task of grief, remember, is to allow you to express those emotions and deal with them. So it's okay. Grieve. It's yours. Own it and embrace it.
Now tell us your name and how to contact you. If someone needs to get in touch with you, how can we do that?
Okay, my name is Malebina, and I can be contacted on 082 323 5888, 082 323 5888, and I can also be contacted on my socials as displayed below. You can contact me any means of contact that is most appropriate to you. You're welcome to use it.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you.
So see you next week.
Bye.